explain guilt, its origin, and how to process it correctly. Guilt becomes positive when it is processed properly. And of course, generally speaking, we want to relate as objectively as possible. And that's where the idea of thinking, questioning comes in. By understanding something, we see it for what it is, we begin to accept it. So dealing with guilt means choosing to turn it positive. And if we say that I've dealt with my guilt positively, what will it mean? How will I know? So what's the outcome that I'm looking for in dealing with my guilt? And importantly here, this is an answer that will be nuanced or different for each person. Not everyone's going to come up with the same answer to what does a positive outcome look like. This is really just more of an example of what I've put here, although it might have some sort of universal application. The positive outcome of guilt is to accept and forgive yourself. Okay, now self-forgiveness, self-compassion, self-love, self-acceptance, very much buzzwords that I'm sure we're all familiar with. What do they mean? Okay, so one of the ways we can dig into what it means is to look at it from the other perspective and say, when do you forgive somebody else? Someone else has wronged you and you feel hurt, you feel offended, you feel upset. What are the things that need to happen before you can forgive somebody else? What would make that easy? What would facilitate it? So if someone comes to you and gives you an authentic apology, if they take accountability for what they've done, if they commit to some sort of change and they follow through on some sort of action, etc., then you may find then that you can easily, effortlessly forgive them. So we want to take all of these ideas of what does it mean for me to forgive somebody else, and then turn it around and say, well, that's what I need to forgive myself. Get that list and now start to do that for yourself. So making amends, it's going to the person or people that we have wronged and admitting, this is what I did. The processing of guilt by understanding it comes after we have contacted it. The natural tendency when there is cognitive dissonance is to turn away from it, which is why people can, for example, knowingly not take heart medication or other health medication, knowing that it's going to be detrimental to them. What's going on is that there is a cognitive dissonance. I don't like to think of myself as being sick because when I look at it, it's upsetting. So I turn away from it, I ignore it, and next thing I know, I'm happy again because I'm not thinking about my heart problem. Similarly with guilt, it's very easy for us to just turn away from it, dismiss it, and say, I'll do better next time. So the first aspect of processing guilt is to sit in its presence. Observe it. Just watch it. Be present with it. You're acting as a witness to it, but this idea of observation, this idea of being a witness, can very easily be used as a form of spiritual bypassing. When we talk about witnessing it, we're not talking about disassociating ourselves from it. We're using the word witnessing in a sense of feeling it. If you've done ice plunge, you sit in the cold water and you watch, you observe, but you're not dissociating yourself from the cold water. You're fully feeling it. In a similar way, when it comes to the guilt, we've got to find a way to be in this balanced position of witnessing, being present with it in a way that's not knocking us off center or causing us to push it away. So this comes with the intention. This ability to sit with guilt will come with the intention of processing it. You've got to be a willing participant to get in the cold water for it to have the psychological benefits. In a similar way, when it comes to dealing with the guilt, you say, I'm going to process this by sitting with it. Then it can be useful. So you are then accepting, in the first instance, this is my nature. This is the current condition. I yelled at my kids again. Now, you can easily understand how this can be a bit of a tightrope walk, because either we're going to accept this in a positive way and simply understand that if I performed the behavior, then I must have the tendency. Or you can say, I'm the sort of person who yells at my kids, therefore I'm a bad parent. Okay, you can see how this is taking us in a negative direction now. So being very intentional, very clear on what you're doing and why is an important part of accepting your nature. We are understanding that I am helplessly expressing my nature. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. Okay. What this quote's basically saying from the Merchant of Venice, anytime we are found out by somebody else for our wrongdoings, we naturally want to be treated leniently. We all pray for mercy, whether it's a judge sitting on the bench, whether it's our neighbour who's caught us stealing fruit from his tree, whether it's our partner, whatever it happens to be. The fact that we want it for ourselves gives us the obligation to render the deeds of mercy, which means to give it to others. And so, staying with this idea of working with guilt from within, you have an obligation to give yourself mercy in just the same way that you have an obligation to give it to others. I actually have an obligation to give mercy to others and myself. Okay, so we have accepted the presence of guilt in the personality. We've accepted that there must be something in here that's causing it. We've given our apologies. We need to deeply understand what was going on. So we are familiar with the receipt, reaction, response mechanism. The trigger comes in, and that trigger lands on the cause, and the cause then expresses as my action. So we need to identify the trigger and the cause. What did I do? And this might sound trivial, but it's important as we're going through this to really name and fully explore what's going on. I yelled at my kids. All right, my kids were doing this happened, and then I got overwhelmed by the situation, I snapped and I yelled at them. You can even do this process out loud. There's something quite powerful about hearing your own voice say the words. There's nothing wrong with journaling. If you want to do this on a journal, if you want to do this while you're going for a walk, thinking to yourself, by all means. Why did I do it? What was the cause? What was the underlying desire that I was satisfying? And again, the difficulty here is in being truly honest. I wanted to shut my kids up because the noise was doing my head in. Whatever it happens to be, what was the desire that I was satisfying? Why is it wrong? And the reason I say be genuinely curious here, when we talk about guilt, what we're saying is that there is a misalignment between behavior and belief. Now, one of them is wrong. Which one is it? So, a good example of this, so this is when I was at the academy. There was one of the students there who was riding on the train A beggar came up to her and asked for some money, and she said, "No, I'm not going to give you any money." She got back to the academy and was feeling guilty. Why? Because someone asked for help and I didn't give it. Now, is this a valid form of guilt? Something is wrong, either the belief or the action. So the belief in this case is, if someone asks for help, I should give it. The action was not giving help. So does that mean that every time a beggar comes up to ask for money, you have to give it? Is there any harm to giving money to beggars? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's the effect? Now, I'm not making judgments on this particular scenario. We can all come up with our own answers here. But for this particular student, the way that she resolved the guilt was not to change the behavior, but to update her belief. Just because someone asks for money doesn't mean I have to give it. I don't know what he's going to do with it. He may have enough money. It's not my responsibility to look after every beggar who comes to me. So she updated her belief, and now the action was the same, but the belief changed, and so there was no longer a misalignment. So that's why I'm talking about this idea of being truly curious. Most of the beliefs that we hold them without knowing them. They are unexamined. And so while they might have some applicability in a narrow range of circumstances, in a wider range of circumstances, at some point we reach the limit, and that particular belief should no longer be governing what I do. So why is it wrong? You yelled at your kids, does that make it wrong? I mean, yelling at your kids has the effect of capturing their attention. They see the importance of something. So maybe it's not as wrong as I thought it was, etc. So I've talked about the desire that was functioning in the personality. Often when we uncover the desire that was functioning in the personality, it does appear to us as egocentric, selfish. We can't really justify the desire. Why did you steal the neighbour's fruit? I didn't want to pay for it myself. I couldn't be bothered going to the supermarket to get them. I didn't think I'd be caught. Okay, so you can see the ego, the selfishness in there. A really powerful way of making it more complete is to say, what was the need that was being unmet in my life? What need was I trying to meet by my action? And when we use this word need, what we're referring to are genuine requirements for our well-being, for our flourishing. And so this formulation of what my need is, you can approach existing frameworks. So self-determination theory, for example, has a large body of research describing 3 key psychological needs that we all share across genders and cultures, ages, socioeconomic, you name it. They are truly universal. Autonomy, relatedness, and competence. If I have an unmet need for relatedness, I want to belong. I want to feel that I'm significant, that I'm meaningful. Then I will try to get that need met. That's positive and healthy to get that need met in your life. But if I try to get that need met by lying, by projecting more wealth, by projecting more virtue than I actually have, then I'm deceiving others. And when I'm found out that, that car that you're driving, it's not yours, your company's leasing it and your company is near bankruptcy. When you're found out, you feel guilty for having lied. So there's a clearly ego-centered aspect. You're deceiving others, you're violating their trust. So the ego-centered desire is easy to see, but what's the unmet need? I just wanted to belong. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I wanted a community. There's nothing wrong with that need. So this is an important way to x-ray through the cognitively dissonant aspect of, oh, I have a selfish desire that controlled me, into something that is genuine and healthy. The desire or the need to be connected. The same thing is true when we're dealing with other people. When you can go beyond the ego-centered desire that they were acting from and see the underlying need that they were trying to get met, naturally you have a sense of compassion. Because that's me. I also want to be part of the group. Okay, I don't lie to people, but I've got the same need. We're not different. So anytime you feel antagonistic towards another person for their bad behavior, analyze down to the underlying need that you also share. So when you've identified the need within you that's being unmet by your situation, then you can say, well, what can I do to meet this need? Now, I do feel like I want to be part of the group. What can I do to meet this need? And you can come up with a couple of simple things that meet that need. Next aspect is getting to the root. Attaching ourselves to the insight that would remove the behavior. Okay, I yelled at my kids. I lied to my friend group about how well I'm doing in my business. What insight would remove that behavior? And you can frame it in this way. If I remembered such and such, I wouldn't do that. If I remembered that the joy of kids is their rambunctious, noisy playing and fighting. If I remembered that my job is to hold space for the children, etc. And again, this is something that you need to come up with for yourself, because it's your gap that you're filling. So getting to that root, identifying that. Once all the analysis has taken place and you've got a deeper understanding of what was going on, why, then you need to make a commitment. All of this without a future-oriented action is just intellectual entertainment. It can just be a way of trying to make yourself feel better. And this acceptance part is powerful when we add the commitment to improve. Self-forgiveness is about turning away from the action that got you there. It means making a plan to be different. Instead of doing that, I'm going to commit to doing this. The trigger was going to the social event, going to the party. How's business? That was the trigger. Next time when someone asks me how's business and I feel that anxiety, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, actually, I'm really struggling with getting clients. I want relatedness. Well, how can I do that? Just be honest with people. People respond to authenticity. Be vulnerable. Okay, you've got to choose the environment, of course. So you are choosing an action that meets the need. From a more long-term perspective, in terms of dealing with guilt, regular study of higher values. What we're doing here is building the set of insights and intuitions around what good behavior is, around what morality is. This can also be a double-edged sword. So we have developed our storehouse of information without actually having that information trickle down and become genuine beliefs or insights. And then all the information just becomes an added burden. We know what we should do and we're still not. I'm gaining more and more and more information about the sort of person I should be. Every spiritual virtue that I learn is just another one that I'm not becoming. So the study of higher values in and of itself is not necessarily beneficial. It's beneficial with the right mindset and with application. Without these, it can actually be gold on a mule's back, as the Swami says. And another practice you can implement to help with this is mindfulness. Mindfulness I'm using in the accepted sense of just the practice that you might put in regularly of witnessing your own mind. What we're doing when we practice this is becoming familiar with the feeling of being with your mind. You're not trying to push the mind away. You're not trying to manage it. You're just being with whatever is. In the same way, you sit into the ice bath, you're just being with your mind. So the regular practice of mindfulness makes you familiar with that sense, with that feeling of sitting with what is. And normally when we do a mindfulness practice, we've got a nice space, we've got 15 or 20 minutes to ourselves, so we feel good. So it's easy. It should be easy, it should be effortless.